I'm still Bill Sandberg, and unless there's been some unusual controversy over the report that you saw a few minutes ago, I'm still your diocesan treasurer. My purpose now is to present to you the 2021 SOM that has been presented to you by the Executive Council. It has the approval of the Executive Council and has been sent to you far enough in advance that any motions for amendment to it were to have been submitted several business days before the convention. On the first slide, you'll see not the full 119 lines of the SOM, which are available to you in your convention materials, but this is the summary sheet that deals at the commission level with the expenses. It's worth noting that money is allotted to each commission, and the commission then makes allocations to the programs or line items that are under its jurisdiction. And thus, when we reach the conclusion of my short report on the 2021 SOM that's up for your consideration, you'll be directing, or questions that you may have about line items in it will likely be directed to representatives of the commissions that made the allocation decisions with the money that was allotted to them. A major change in working up the proposed SOM this year compared to past years was the tremendous economic uncertainty with which we dealt, occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting shutdowns or curtailments of economic activity. That virus and the consequent reactions hit around the time we were estimating 2021 revenue. That made it tricky. We knew from our records what the total of the all the parishes' standard normalized operating income would be, and we knew what that would yield in the way of contributions to the diocese at the usual 16% rate, but we didn't know what the ability in 2021 would be for our parishes to meet that kind of asking. Most years we would arrive at that by making projections of the trend lines in the percentage of asking that gets accepted. And we would multiply that by the 16% of SNOI total. This time, though, we thought that there might be some discontinuity in that trend line of how much the parishes would be able to commit to compared to what was asked of them. And so rather than just projecting from the trend line of recent years, we decided to work up an SOM based on a few scenarios about the available funds, ranging from no change in the acceptances by parishes all the way to a 15% reduction. We started with the 15% reduction as we were working up the SOM for 2021, thinking that it would be better to prepare for a very lean year and then be pleasantly surprised when revenues ran better than that, and we would be able to add back some money and allow commissions to fund other priorities that had had to go underfunded or unfunded. Happily, the economy did not follow the most pessimistic of the scenarios outlined, and so we were able to switch to expecting a 10% reduction in 2021 compared to 2020. The economic recovery thus far has been on track with something like that. After the third quarter, the overall U.S. economy is operating at about 10% lower than it was before the pandemic set in. If it continues to improve, then we might expect our 2021 SOM to have underestimated revenue. If it plateaus, we might expect that our 2021 estimate of revenue is about right. And if it turns for the worse, we may have to make some reductions during 2021. More than any of the previous years that I, or probably most of the people involved on the Commission on the Diocese or DEC have experienced, this coming year, 2021, has big question marks. That said, we have presented to DEC, and DEC has approved after some modifications through discussion, an SOM. You'll see that the center column, which is highlighted in yellow for those of you looking at it in color, projects total resources of $2.785 million, a little bit less than what was approved for 2020, and total spending of $2.783 million, about $87,000 less than what was approved for 2020. And we're looking at a very modest surplus of $2,234. To be candid with you, when we start to talk about an annual surplus or deficit of $2,000 on spending of $2.7 or $2.8 million, we're really saying this is close to balanced, and we're not going to make a fetish out of showing it at exactly zero net surplus or deficit. This could just as well wind up being a slight deficit. It could be a little bigger surplus. Frankly, it's a matter of who knows at this point. The Commission's faced a difficult job in dealing with reduced allocations of money. And if you'll compare the first column of numbers, which is the SOM for 2020, and the second column of numbers, the one I've just been talking about that's in yellow, you'll see that there's significant reductions from the 2020 approved to the 2021 proposed SOMs, and those fall across all of the areas with the exception of the Commission on the Episcopal Church and the Anglican Communion, where there has been an increase, and that is partly reflects our policy of meeting fully the asking from the Episcopal Church, and also we were a little underestimated back when we approved the 2020 SOM because of some inaccurate figures we had been given. If you'll move to slide number 8, you'll see some more figures comparing the years from 2015 through 2021. The intention here is to give you a way of seeing the total budgeted money for each year and the total actual money for each year. That would be the third and the sixth columns, respectively. And of course, for 2020 and 2021, we don't know the total actual. That's why the right half is blank for those 2 years. If you'll look at column 2 on this chart, you will notice that compared to the years of 2015 through 2017, we're relying on non-pledged money for a higher percentage of our spending. The 13.5% that you see in the top line for 2021, budgeted other, means that we're expecting 13.5% of our spending to come from sources other than the pledges received from our parishes. And that will be mostly accounted for by an increase in the amount withdrawn from the diocesan endowment. That was done by action of DEC. The reason that it's up are twofold. One, an anticipated reduction in how much we'll be receiving from the Episcopal pledge income. If you look on line 3, you'll see that we're expecting the Episcopal pledge income to be down by about $210,000 from 2020 to 2021. We wanted to make up some of that from the endowment so that we would not have to make even more painful cuts or sometimes more damaging cuts to some of our spending items. We also are undertaking the funding of a bishop search in 2021, and that is a let's say once in a decade kind of item, but it needs to be paid for, and that also accounts for why we are drawing more from the endowment than usual. An expense that comes along, let's say once in a decade, is equivalent to a capital expense item, and the Commission on the Diocese and DEC agreed that this was something that reasonably should be taken from the endowment. We're funding most of that search in 2021, and well, there you have it. If you have questions, I'll be happy to have them, and I would like to have the help of the various commission heads or commission representatives to answer anything about line items that are under their jurisdiction. Thank you very much.